Alright, so this unit is titled 9.1 Simplifying Radicals. This is the first section. It's going to be broken up into 3 parts, so I'm doing the video for the first part, which is multiplying radicals. And the first 2 examples for this section are just for us to see the difference in vocabulary. Right here I have square root of 4. Example 2, I have 4 squared. Very different. When you're taking the square of a number, you multiply that number by itself. So for example 2, 4 squared, the answer is 16, because 4 times 4 is 16. Square root is the opposite of that, so the square root of 4 would be 2, because 2 times 2 would give me 4. So just know the difference. Whenever I have a radical, that's square root. Whenever I have the exponent of 2, that's square. And so example 3 through 9 are more like what we're practicing in class. For this one, you gotta know that the square and the square root are inverse operations. That means they cancel each other out. And so in example 3, I can take the square root and the square and cancel them. And so the only thing that's left is the 4. So my answer for example 3 is 4. All you have to know is that square and square root are inverse operations. And so very similar in example 4, I have the square root of 4 times the square root of 4. So if I rewrite this as the square root of 4 squared, then I can cancel out the square root with the square, and all that's left is 4. So my answer is 4. So again, I can rewrite it like this because the expression of 2 is telling me multiply it twice. So same thing on example 5. If you want to rewrite it just so that you can show that they're canceling out, you can do that. But if you just remember that anytime you multiply the square root of a number and then multiply the square root of the same number, you get just 5, that number. So I'm just going to rewrite it so you can see. I'm canceling out those, and my answer is just 5. Okay, so in example 6, now they start getting a little bit different because now I have a number that's outside the radical, and so I have to multiply the numbers outside the radical and then the numbers with the radical. So first I'm going to multiply 2 times 2, and that gives me 4. And then I gotta multiply square root of 5 times the square root of 5, and I already know that gives me 5. So 5. And then I just multiply my results. 4 times 5 is 20. So my answer is 20. For example 7, I have 3 square root of 7 squared. So I'm going to rewrite this just so it looks like the previous example. I'm going to take 3 square root of 7, and I'm going to write it twice because the exponent that I have is a 2. And so now I follow the same method. I multiply the numbers that are outside first. So 3 times 3, that gives me 9. And then square root of 7 times square root of 7 is just going to give me 7. And 9 times 7 is 63. So that's my answer. So they're pretty simple. And the last example, or next example, very similar. Multiply numbers outside. 3 and 2, so 3 times 2, that's 6. Square root of 7 times square root of 7, that's just 7. 6 times 7 is 42. Then my last example, I just wanted to put this one in here because there are some times where you don't have a number outside the radical. You just have to remember that there's a 1 right there. So you can always write it yourself. There's a 1 there. And so now you multiply 1 times 5. That's 5. And then square root of 10 times square root of 10. That's just 10. And so 5 times 10 is 50.